Okay, I think we've given it enough time now. Let's get started. Hello, and thank you for joining our session today titled Time is Money, Solving Problems Faster in IT. Joining us for this session is one of our key strategic partners, Freshworks. Discovery and ITSM are two of the core capabilities of Device42, as well as our commitment to integrations with other software. Our strong belief is that the combination can be far greater than the sum of the parts, and this is definitely the case with Freshworks, which is one of our most important strategic partnerships. And that's what we'll be demonstrating and discussing here today. The agenda is, I'm going to go through a few slides, mercifully few, then we're going to get to a demo, and lastly, we're going to wrap up with a Q&A. Okay, so my name is Andrew Wharton. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Device42. Prior to Device42, I was at Oracle and AWS. I've been with Device42 for about 1.5 years since 2020. I lead our entire product vision and roadmap, and I'm excited to show you what we've been able to build here and the integration between these two products. Also joining us from Device42 is Chris Panini, one of our senior solutions architects. Chris has been with Device42 for 7 years and works closely with our customers and partners to rapidly identify solutions to their critical challenges. Chris will be providing the demo today. We're also excited to have a guest speaker, Berkeley Vogelheim, to join us from Freshworks. Berkeley is a product manager at Freshservice and has been with Freshworks since 2018, spending time both in solutions consulting and product marketing. In addition to a wide range of knowledge for the ITSM suite, he is a thought leader in the ITSM space. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we've got to go around here. We plan to keep this session short and sweet. We've allotted some time for questions at the end. If you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to send them in the little questions box on the doohickey on the side there for GoToWebinar, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. This presentation is also being recorded and will be shared after, along with access to some helpful information on our integration with Freshservice and a link to a download of our free trial. Without any more distractions or any ado, let's get started. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, folks, for joining the session today. Let me just minimize this here. There we go. So before we walk through some of the common challenges with maintaining an accurate CMDB, let's have a little look at the power behind Device42 as a discovery platform. So first off, Device42 delivers a full stack hybrid IT discovery and inventory management system. It arms enterprises and their trusted partners with application and infrastructure insights, enabling them to manage and transform faster, more efficiently, and with lower risk. So if you take a look at the diagram on this page, this really summarizes the strengths and what we do best. So first, there's discovery. We provide the broadest and deepest discovery from a single solution that is agentless by leveraging standard protocols that already exist on your network today. WMI, SSH, vendor APIs, SNMP, IPMI, SMIS, the list goes on. Anything from physical to virtual to cloud to container platforms fall within our scope. We aggregate all this data from all different sources to help enrich the data, as well as provide a source of truth. Then we build a repository, so an inventory of all this data, as well as capture the changes and a lot of the moving pieces throughout a life cycle of an asset, a software, an operating system, an application. I like to say we purify this data, we deduplicate it, and then we simply feed it into a CMDB. And most importantly, we discover your dependencies, both upstream and downstream, to help provide better insights when making critical IT and business decisions. I think a simple way to think of this is we discover your inventory and give you an understanding of what's there and also what it's doing. Our customers get the most accurate end-to-end agentless discovery and dependency data about their entire IT estate, all within a single application. It's not letting me, there we go. So now we'll talk a little bit, before I dip into some of the challenges of having an incomplete CMDB, I like to think of this as kind of like a cause and effect. So, first, there's many reasons that result in an unreliable source of truth. Some of these reasons can be, having static and inaccurate data. So without a discovery or some type of automation ingestion of data, it becomes quite stale, especially in active environments. Secondly, you have data scattered across multiple sources, and this is what they refer to as shadow IT. It's a very common challenge across many of the customers that we engage with. It's really like putting a puzzle together, but pieces are in separate boxes, or some of them are even missing. It just makes tasks, simple tasks, very challenging. And then there's limited visibility into the impact of a planned or unplanned event. So this is really where dependency mapping within Device42 helps solidify and understand these relationships. But as I mentioned, that cause has an effect on the business, right? So those technical challenges lead into business challenges. So one of the business impacts is a faulty root cause analysis, which leads to risk of critical equipment and business service failure. So really not having a clear understanding of the impact of a particular server or application can lead to a lot of these failures. Maybe there's certain SLAs that you need to deliver your customers. So really not having a 360 view of your infrastructure and the dependencies makes this a challenge. Then this is one of my favorites. It's inability to plan change cost time. Inability to plan change can cost time and money. This is really an important challenge where it's not always about not being able to get the job done, but it's the time it takes to get that job done. The resource, the money that's spent accomplishing that job is inefficient. And the confidence of making sure that you're doing the right thing can certainly be questionable. So then there's the lack of service health knowledge derails preemptive maintenance. So I see this as really not having the right resources in the data. It never enables you to be proactive. You kind of live in a constant reactive state, but more of a reactive state where resources and time and money are spent hunting down information. So as we get to the next slide, I'm going to turn this over to Berkeley to talk about some of the ITSM challenges and some fun facts before we get into the solution itself. Berkeley, over to you.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. Yeah. So over the last couple of years, I think we've all, as folks who have worked in IT as well as just employees, have recognized the massive changes that a lot of organizations have undergone. And IT infrastructure and IT service management have been one of those areas where there have been significant changes. So one of the things we at Freshworks have seen that a lot of our customers have struggled with is really just the amount of new technology, especially cloud technology, that they've had to adopt. 90% of enterprises within the next year will have at least some sort of hybrid cloud, meaning they have still some on-premise systems and a number of systems within the cloud. Similarly, that statistic on the top right is one that I like to call out too, where systems have gotten a lot more complex in the last few years. It's no longer that you just have an application running on a single server that a certain set of employees are using. It's very common now that many applications and many services are being leveraged by a combination of cloud tools, on-prem tools. So it's really important for organizations to understand what is relying on what. So if something goes wrong, they can really quickly assess the impact and the root cause of that issue. And then the last part of this is really analyzing the cost of these things. So at the end of the day, that's really what we're dealing with is what is the actual dollar cost of these things when they go wrong. And we've seen a huge spike when organizations have done an analysis on their downtime and what that downtime costs them. So most of the organizations we're working with are really fine-tuning how quickly they can resolve issues and how quickly they can get things back up. So if a user is reporting an error or if a monitoring tool is reporting an error, how quickly can our systems or our people figure out what's the root cause of that, what's the full impact of that, and get those systems back online, because every single one of those minutes, every single one of those hours a system is down is costing a lot of money. So what does that mean for organizations today? What should they be thinking about in terms of how they can be successful in limiting the downtime of their systems and limiting things going wrong? One of the key things, as Chris talked about earlier, is full visibility and context of all of your systems. What this means in a very simple sense is if I'm a business user, if I report that I'm not able to access an application or a system that I need to do my job, how quickly can IT figure out, okay, so what's going on, what's the full scope of this issue, what's the root cause of this issue, and what are other potential impacted systems? This really goes into kind of points 1 and 2 you're seeing on the slide here, is the ability to accurately figure out the root cause and then trace back through your infrastructure to figure out what's going on. Chris, I know I kind of talked about this from our end, but from your guys' perspective, as you guys sort of specialize in the discovery space, how have you seen trends in terms of organizations having to sort of manage both cloud and on-prem resources over the last couple of years?
Yeah, Berkeley, that's a great question. So, I would say we probably had our first hybrid customer maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we're starting to see now, I'd say just about every engagement we get into, the customer has a hybrid model. If not, they're looking at moving there in the next year or two, or within the near future. A lot of them have infrastructure in multiple public clouds, so looking at ways to support multi-cloud environments. It is really important, and I think one of the biggest things is there's not a lot of tool sets out there that can help manage all these different resources, especially providing kind of a single pane of glass, by seeing everything on-prem as well as what you have running in the cloud.
Yeah, and I think that really, that challenge has a huge impact on service desk teams and their ability to solve issues quickly. Before it was, hey, this application's down, I know it runs on this server because we have our one tool that can discover our servers, and it's all very simple. But now it's like, okay, well, we have some AWS resources that we're relying on. We still have some on-prem servers we're relying on. We may have some Microsoft or Google services in the cloud that we're relying on. So these things are very complicated, and what that means is that it can be much more difficult to troubleshoot basic issues and get things up and running again. But at the same time, again, that downtime is even more costly than ever, so it's more critical that we do so. So holistically, what Chris and I are getting at and what we're kind of talking about today is the Freshservice solution with Device42 Advanced Discovery and Asset Management. What solution is really critical is having a service desk that is easy for your help desk staff to use, easy for your IT staff to use. But it's also important to give that staff using that tool the proper context and the proper information so that they can do their job effectively and save the organization time and money. So a quick intro into Freshservice and what it is. For those of you who don't know, Freshservice is an ITSM solution. It is a fully functional IT service management platform. It comes with a help desk with end user interface, ticketing system, problem and change management, project management, and a CMDB. Really the main value points of Freshservice is we try to be a flexible, modern, intuitive, intelligent, and extensible system. Our philosophy primarily to our customers is you don't need to overspend or overbuy tools that you're not ready to use or need. You should be able to kind of purchase what you need right now, implement it very quickly and start seeing value from it, and then add on more and more advanced tools as you need. And really the extensible part of Freshservice is that the maturity of the tool is really deep. So it's not just you're limited to a basic ticketing system. You can start with that and then continue to grow on and on into more advanced functionalities, including things like orchestrations, advanced AI-driven chatbots, things like that. And for more advanced functionality, like what we use Device42 for, such as advanced, application dependency mapping, we partner with organizations like Device42 to allow you to have that functionality very easily within your platform. So holistically, what does this give us? We've talked about some of the challenges and the pitfalls for a service desk team working without an integrated CMDB or without all of that context. What this can do is this can, have a harmful impact on certain key KPIs, such as your mean time to resolution, end user satisfaction if their systems are down. This can impact customer facing systems and really have an overall negative impact on your entire organization. However, what Chris is going to show you guys in a few minutes and what we're really getting at with this solution is an advanced discovery process that can handle your hybrid environments, so both cloud and on-prem, giving you a full picture of your environment, what systems are dependent on what applications are running where. A self-documenting CMDB, again, that tracks those relationships and makes them readily available for your service desk team. So as they're planning a change or as they're resolving an incident that's reported by a monitoring system, they can easily see at their fingertips all of the downstream impacted services of that issue. They can easily track what the root cause of a certain issue is if it's an issue reported from an application or something like that. So all that information is available to them. And again, the end result of that is more effectively planned changes, an improved MTTR, so reduced downtime, and really what we call high precision service management. So keeping your systems up and running as quickly as possible. Awesome. And Chris, I'll pass things back to you to get into the demo and show people what we're talking about.
Great, thank you, Berkeley, and thanks for kicking things off, Andrew. So yep, let me go ahead and I'm going to pull up the application here at Device42, and if you guys have any questions, along the way, feel free to add it right into the question box there, and we'll make sure that we can get to those at the end. All right. Cool. So this is the web interface of Device42. So some of you might be familiar with Device42, some of you this might be new. So let's talk a little bit just at a high level of what you're looking at. This, as I mentioned, this is the web application of Device42. So you'll see in here, really the core of what we do is discovery, as we talked about in the slide deck. And you'll see it right at the top menu in here that we have a discovery menu. In this discovery menu, again, it's all agentless. We can go out there and collect data using a lot of those native protocols that already exist, or standard protocols that already exist on the network. You'll notice, though, that we can go out there and collect all different types of infrastructure. So just by the different jobs in here, all your hypervisors, Unix, Linux platforms, Windows platforms. So we can go back to a lot of legacy infrastructure like HPUX, Solaris, AS400s, mainframe, even Windows 2000. We've been in some of the engagements where customers have really old legacy infrastructure that's running production applications, and where we're able to help them surface that data as well as understand relationships. Now, you'll also notice in here, there's other things like cloud discovery, as we talked about, seeing more customers moving to hybrid state environments. We can discover that, as well as a lot of serverless functionality like S3 buckets, RDSs, SQL instances in Azure, VPCs, you name it. You'll also notice in here too, as we're going through any of the jobs, that it's very simple to set up and configure Device42. So I don't know if you've used a lot of discovery solutions out there, but some of them could be very painful. With Device42, you would just, once you have the right credentials and access, you go out there and you can target a subnet, an IP range, a list of host names. You even have exclusions that you can put within the job. So for instance, maybe you want to scan a whole CIDR block, but there's certain times of the day that you don't want to perform scans against maybe a mail server or anything along those lines. You have the flexibility to do that in the system. And then we also work with what we call a remote collector for discovery. So you have, think of like a hub and spoke type environment. So you have your main appliance that's ingesting all the data that is going to be integrating with Freshservice to be able to push all the attribute data or CI data into Freshservice. But additionally, you have remote collectors. And this is why Device42 not only is an on-premise solution, but it's a great solution for customers that have that are in DoD environments, or financial industries, or education industries, or healthcare, where data is needs to be very secure. You can leverage remote collectors to go out there, perform discovery in different network segments, and it really mitigates the need of having to open up multiple firewall rules to perform that scan. And then most importantly, you'll set these all on a schedule. So as we talked about stale data being inaccurate within a CMDB, how do you eliminate that? Well, the first step is really performing discovery, discovering changes that happen, and making sure that that's all being synced within Freshservice. One other thing I will mention is if you look under analytics, we have discovery scores. So those of you that are customers or potential customers, those of you that are partners, some of the bottlenecks with solutions out there is, you go in there, you run a scan, and you don't know what's really happening. We provide discovery scores to help identify where things might have, failed from, let's say, a simple port check, maybe an authentication issue. So these are ways that we can help facilitate some of those challenges and make it easier for them to be overcome, as well as simplifying, that step of getting that good quality data. And then obviously we'll talk a little bit about how easy it is to set that up and push that into Freshservice. And the last thing I'll reference in here within Device42 is you'll notice in here that there's a lot of different menu items. It doesn't take a team to manage the platform. Most of our customers today have one or two admins that really control Device42. And I want you to see this as an engine under the hood when you look into like an integration with Freshservice. So Freshservice is that ITSM CMDB platform. Device42 is that agentless discovery solution that goes out there and collects this data, but then scheduling that will help automate and eliminate human error and keep a good quality data that's going into the system. But under this resources, one thing I do want to stress is that fact that you'll see a lot of different CI types. We build a lot of these relationships from discovery. So a good example is you have devices related to operating systems, to software. It might have an IP address, a MAC address, but these all correlate to a particular switch port or to a subnet. So these are relationships that really make it easier when you're starting to build integrations with other platforms, that you don't have to go through the process of merging the records or deduplicating or tying those resources together. So that's just one, again, some points that I wanted to get across. So now as we set up the integration, we'll talk a little bit about Freshservice. So within Freshservice, it's as simple as going into the admin section here and go into the App Store, and you can download the Device42 application right from here. So you'll see in here, once you search for it, you can download it. I'm going to go into the settings option in here just so you can see some information with it. But in here, you'll set up a connection back to a cloud connector within Device42, and I would say you can contact us. We can give you some more details about how this works, the ins and outs. But it works all with a token authentication. So basically, your Device42 instance authenticates through a token to your Freshservice instance. And most importantly, though, is the schedule, right? So how do you keep a CMDB within Freshservice up to date? Well, you have, again, we talked about discovery being on a schedule. Now you're syncing the data from Device42 on a schedule, which is what's going to help identify any of the changes. One of the things that's really nice about this is after you perform a full sync within the system, any additional changes are what's going to be happening on the subsequent sync. So you're not going through a whole full sync again. It makes things a lot easier. It allows you to do quicker syncs. And it allows you to really scale things within both platforms as far as the integration. So now we'll go into the inventory. So within Freshservice, you have an asset inventory. This is where all the data gets collected and pushed to, and this is all the different infrastructure components that are going to be coming from Device42. So for instance, I'll pull up a physical server in here. So we have a few ES6i hosts. So these are what were discovered in our system that get pushed over to Freshservice. And you'll see in here, you have different asset types. So you have servers, you have, it could be cloud instances. You have the vendor as well, or the model. So we can see it's a PowerEdge R430. You'll see a lot of resources in here, or a lot of, I should say, inventory data of that machine. So things like the memory, the CPU, the OS version, hardware addresses, IP addresses. So some of you might have multiple IPs, multiple NICs associated to your servers, even virtual NICs. We can identify those from discovery and then correlate those pieces back within a system like Freshservice. So as you're putting in a change request or a ticket, it's nice to know, what's the management interface and being able to see all these different components. Now you also look in here and you'll see that there's some associations. So as you go through the standard process of maybe creating an incident, if you go up to the top in here, you'll see that you can do service requests, problems, or changes. So that standard or ritual process that you follow in Freshservice is the same. The only difference is that asset inventory is being fed live from Device42. Now, I'm going to go back to that asset inventory section. And what I want to do is pull up another server in here. So we'll pull up, let's see, S1 MySQL. So you'll see in here that this is now a virtual machine. You'll also notice in here that we have, the asset state, whether it's in use or not in use. These are things that can toggle back and forth within our platform. So if you have a VM on a host that's turned off, you'll be able to understand that and see that live within the instance, which makes things a lot easier. Now, as well in here, you'll also see operating system, disk space. If we were capturing last login user, you'd be able to see who was logged into that machine. This is all data that, again, is coming over from Device42. But most importantly, as you start to look at some of the other components in here, let's take a look at software. So having a full understanding of all your software, whether it's through a package manager or whether it goes through a Windows installer process, Device42 can understand this. We also can pull this data from SCCM, right? So we can connect through SCCM and identify all the software on all your Windows servers and hosts. And then that all correlates back into Freshservice's CMDB. Now in here, you'll see there's different versions and builds. So I can go into Chef, for instance, and I can take a look at that version. You'll have different categories that you can create and document within Device42. It's really just a way of tagging which softwares are important, but that all transitions over. You could also see all the installations. So seeing how many other devices are running this particular firmware. So, when you go back to different use cases, I know a lot of what we talked about might be around transformation activity, inventory management, but a lot of other use cases around security, compliance, understanding, when Log4j came out, we helped customers as far as understanding where there might be devices that had potential software that needed to be remediated, or where they can find these target lists. So these are all ways that having this inventory, keeping it up to date, will simplify a lot of the processes that you guys do today, and actually take something complex and really make that easier to understand, and making sure that you're doing that with confidence. Now, if we go back in here, the other piece that, as we talked about, is, associating tickets in here, but the relationships. So this is really a primary piece, and this is all being fed again from our system. So how this is done in Device42 is really understanding relationships through service communication. So we can understand the services running on a machine. We understand the ports that they're listening on. We could even fingerprint those services to identify the role of that device. Is it a database server? Is it a web server? And while we do that, we build out different views, and that views are upstream and downstream effects of that machine. So think about how much, or I should say, think about how much easier it is to dissect a problem, or going through, let's say, a planned event, and fully understanding the relationships that exist or what would be impacted by that machine. So in Freshservice, if you go into a relationship map, and what I'll do, I'm just going to move this view here for a second. I'm going to set this down to just level 1, and I'll zoom in. So this is the MySQL database server, and you can see in here that we can get to details of it, which will show associations to the tickets. But a lot of this is built manually today in Freshservice. So now Device42 can automate this process, where you can find relationships between the devices. You can hover over and see whether it's receiving data or whether it's sending data. So both that inbound, outbound activity is captured in our system and relayed over. And then as you go to different levels, so let's just say we want to expand to level 2, we can see what that layer 2 impact would have, and what servers would be part of that impact. And as we go further and further, I'm going to actually I'll go up one more level here, level 3. But you get the gist of it. So what this really does is it helps help you understand that impact from a dependency perspective. So again, as you're going through change requests, as you're going through any type of incidents or problems, think about how this can reduce MTTR. Think about how this can help you identify who to contact in a much more quicker fashion by having all this data accessible. So I'm going to pause here. What I'd like to do is kind of turn it back. What we'll do is we'll run into a polling, and then we're going to go into some Q&A, and then we'll wrap things up in here. But hopefully this was informative for you guys, and you guys should now be able to see the poll. So we'll take a few minutes to do that before we could jump into Q&A. Okay, so it looks like we're all set in here.
Thank you, Chris. That was wonderful. If you, and to the crowd, if you'd like to take advantage of Freshservice powered by Device, do we have slides that we want to put up?
Right there we go.
The demo gods are not happy. I think we're still looking at your screen, Chris.
Yeah, you should be able to see the slide deck. Is that correct?
I'm still looking at the dependency map.
Oh, let me stop that right now.
Demo gods are not smiling.
Sorry about that, folks. There's always. Okay, let's try it again.
This is how you know it's live.
Is that coming up?
Great. All right, this is my cue. So if you guys want to take advantage of Freshservice powered by Device42, you can do that right now by downloading a free trial. Be sure to check out the white paper here, and this will all be in the presentation that you can look at, and these are all clickable links. The white paper on how to make the most of the integration between Freshworks and Device42. We're also super proud to be sponsoring Freshworks' upcoming Be Unstoppable event. And Berkeley, you want to give us some details on that?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So as you guys can see on the screen, we are hosting a virtual summit next week. It's a very straightforward one-day event. It's going to include a number of presentations from some industry analysts and ITIL thought leaders. So if you want to learn more about kind of where the industry is going as a whole and new processes being employed, you can definitely tune into those sessions. We're going to have sessions similar to the one we had today, some demo sessions with some of our partners, including Device42, which is one of the big hosted sessions we're doing. And then we're also doing some masterclass sessions. So for any Freshservice users or anyone interested in Freshservice, they're actually going to be hands-on training and implementation sessions led by some of our solutions engineers. So it's a one-day summit, very easy to access. All the sessions are going to be recorded, so you can access them later. But feel free to scan that QR code to register. It's free to join and all that. And yeah, tune into some of the sessions. They're going to be really informative and helpful as you guys are trying to upskill your IT.
So I think it's time we dive into a little bit of Q&A. I noticed we've got a couple questions in there, and we've had some actual come in earlier. So I'm just going to tee this off. Chris, I'm going to give you one here. Can Device42 support legacy infrastructure? You're on mute.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, yes, we can. So as I mentioned in the kind of the intro of my demo there, we support a lot of the native protocols that exist. So, WMI, SSH, even things like FTP and Telnet for some of the really old gear that's out there. But HPUX, Solaris, mainframe, AS400, so all your mid-range mainframe servers, those are common ones that we see with a lot of our customers today.
Great. Another question that came in, how seamless is the integration? Is it require a consultation or professional service to get it work together? I mean, Chris, you kind of went over this. Do you want to just real quick hit on it again?
Yeah, sure. So within the integration, it's really simple. So if you don't have Device42, you want to download Device42 and ingest data in there. Typically, we would recommend obviously doing discovery to populate that data. And then within Freshservice, you go right into the App Store, you download the plugin. I will say there are instructions in the app, as well as instructions that you can get right from Device42's documentation website. And then we're also here to support you guys to make sure you go through that process. But it's really simple. I would say it's a painless process that get you up and running in just a few minutes.
So one question that came in, and this is, so how is Device42 licensed? I mean, I think Chris, you and I can probably tag team this, but you want to give it a go?
Yeah, sure. So Device42 is typically licensed through by the number of devices. So based on all the infrastructure that you have out there, anything that has an IP address would count as a device. Now, if you have things like application servers and looking at different modules within the platform, some of those will be based on a subset of those number of devices, but typically it's a device count.
Okay. So let's see. Looking at the questions here, can or should Device42 be used to replace SCCM? Our SCCM installation doesn't seem to be as accurate as we'd like. Anybody?
Andrew, can you repeat that one?
So the question is, can or should Device42 be used to replace SCCM? Our SCCM installation doesn't seem to be accurate.
Got it. Yeah, so I think just maybe one thing to be clear is Device42 is a documentation platform, so we do integrate with SCCM. I wouldn't say that we would replace SCCM because we don't do any type of patching. We don't go out there and make any changes to the network. But what I would say is rather than building out discovery jobs across all your different Windows environments, you can use Device42 to integrate directly with SCCM, and it still leverages WMI, and then be able to push that data into Freshservice to keep that up to date.
Okay. Let's see. Just looking at the questions here, trying to make sure we ask some that would be interesting. So one of the questions is, we're in the middle of a migration, and would deploying this solution cause more issues now rather than later? Is it better to start early? And if so, what are some of the implications of deploying early in a pre-migration situation?
Yeah, I can, Andrew, I can take that one too. I don't think it would matter if you're in the middle of migration. I would say really the nice thing and what we get feedback from our customers is that the ease of use of setting up Device42 and our approach of having a virtual appliance, it's all a pre-configured appliance, leveraging a lot of protocols. We also work by the least privileged account, so it does help facilitate things when you're working with your security team and going through change requests. But it's something that you can get up and running very quickly and see the value. So you don't have to rely on, I always joke around, but a lot of times a customer will be setting up Device42 in parallel with another tool set, maybe let's say an ITSM tool or a monitoring solution, and they find that they can almost be done with Device42 in just a couple of weeks before they can even get through certain configuration steps within those platforms. So I will say that no matter what state you're in, the sooner that you can get Device42 in there and get us deployed, the quicker you'll get to finding that end goal of where you want to be. And I will say that we've cut timelines down for customers, even if they're moving to the cloud, from years to months, just by having a better understanding of the data that they have out there.
That's great. Another question just came in, and I can actually take this one. Does it integrate with things like Intune? As a matter of fact, we just completed our Intune integration and shipped it in our the release that went out yesterday, I believe. So good question, and thank you for teeing me up on that one. Let's see, do we have any other ones? And I'm assuming this is a question for Device42, it could also be a question for Freshservice, but do you have connectors for other ITSM tools, for instance, like Cherwell? And I think that's probably a question for you, Berkeley.
Yeah, so Freshservice, again, we do have a full ITSM platform, so we kind of handle a lot of the functionality that Cherwell would. Most of our integrations are focused on things like monitoring tools, asset discovery tools like Device42. There are instances where we need to integrate with a tool like Cherwell, and we absolutely can do that. One of the advantages of Freshservice is if you look at the landscape of ITSM tools, we're one of the only mature solutions that's cloud native. So we're really primarily, an API first, cloud first platform, and it allows us to integrate with a lot of other cloud tools really easily without it sort of being this awkward situation where you have to build all these manual connectors to these sorts of things.
So I'm going to ask a question here that actually came in, and I'm not sure of the answer, and so this is going to be real time for both of you guys. But question is, do you integrate with Topdesk? And if a new change is found, are we able to put that into a queue for a configuration manager to review before allowing that change to occur within our CMDB? I think that's kind of, again, like, I'm not sure who's the right answer for that, or the right person for that question. And it may actually not be a question for either of you, but.
Yeah, Berkeley, I don't know if I mean, we don't have an integration. I can speak to just a little bit about our data model in general, but I don't know if you had something specific that you wanted to mention there.
So I think Topdesk is another sort of ticketing and, from what I understand, kind of ITSM platform. I don't know if I can answer that for Topdesk. I know we at Freshservice have the integration with Device42, and that sort of functionality is available with us. So typically the way our change control would work with Device42 is either an external employee or someone in IT could create a request for a change, write the description along with your ITIL best practices that you've set up. You'd associate the asset or the application that the change will impact, and then along with the information from Device42, you'd be able to see all the downstream information. So if you're, upgrading a server or something, you'd immediately be able to see the impacted applications and the business user of that application and the cost of that, or what could potentially go wrong. All that information would get sent to a cab that you've set up. They could review all of that, again, with all the context from Device42 and the downstream impacted services, and then make a call as to whether to approve or reject that. So that's typically how the flow would work in Freshservice, and that's all out of the box, functionality with it, information from Device42. But again, I can't unfortunately answer that with regards to Top Desk and the functionality offered there.
Why don't we just say Top Desk can't do it, you can, for lack of a better, that'll be the answer for today.
Yeah, and Andrew, the only, oh, sorry, I was gonna say the only comment maybe I would make from our side is just, you know, Device42 does have an open REST API where you could integrate with other solutions out there. I know that, you know, if you're using automation or orchestration tools and really creating more of a DevOps pipeline within your organization, Device42 can really become that source of truth to help guide some of those. And we also support webhooks. So if there are discovery things happening and maybe changes like a new IP or new device is detected, those webhooks can go out to anything that can consume a webhook. So, you know, there are some cases where you can have that initiate a ticket within Freshservice or might move a ticket within Freshservice. So there is some things that you might have to build outside of Device42, but just know that flexibility is there.
Here's a question which is probably a good question for Berkeley, but I'm gonna ask it as it's written, and then I'm going to tell you what I think it means. So we'll kind of go there. So the question is written is, I completed a full build of all assets in our inventory. Would a transition with the currently built assets be easy to transition over the way it's built in ServiceNow's CMDB? So this feels almost like, you know, they have some assets that are in a format that's comfortable with CMDB. How would you guys typically do that type of transition or migration almost?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Andrew. And this is, I would say, not to poke the bear, but transitioning customers off of ServiceNow is, I would say, the most common type of implementation we do. So there's a lot of documentation that we have for how to convert a lot of their data models, whether it's, you know, ticket history, change history, asset history, into Freshservice. There's a couple ways to go about it, depending on the way you have it set up in your CMDB. We could just do a pure data migration of the information you have in your CMDB into what we have in Freshservice. Our data model is very flexible, so we would pre-configure it with all of the different fields and information that you are trying to capture, and then we would just do an import of the data over. We actually have tools that do that from other systems like ServiceNow into Freshservice. The other option that a lot of customers do is they say, hey, look, we have this existing CMDB, but it comes with a lot of tech baggage, as we like to say, a lot of old information. It's very messy. Maybe we don't want to take it all and just kind of push it into our new system. Part of our new implementation is we want kind of new clean data. So in that case, what we would often do is we would leverage, you know, discovery tools, potentially like Device42, rediscover all of the assets in your environment and bring them into Freshservice. Now, what happens in that case is there may be some pieces of information in your old CMDB that you want to keep. That's totally fine. We can then do the import after we have that baseline of information in Freshservice. Our system will normalize all of your data, so you won't have a bunch of duplicate assets. It'll normalize them on your serial number, your MAC address, or your IP, whichever one is kind of your primary key. And then you'd be able to kind of bring in that context. However, you'd have that context with your sort of new, fresh and clean discovered information from something like Device42.
Well, I think it's kind of ran out of questions here. So basically, I think we're going to close out the Q&A right now. If you guys have any additional questions after the webinar regarding the demo, the presentation, the joint solution, oh, heck, anything, you know, feel free to visit us at Device42 or reach out to us via our information line, which is info@device42.com. All the attendees will receive a link of this recording via email, along with a whole lot more information about how to get started with the joint solutions. And any questions we didn't get to will be answered afterwards via email. Thank you again for all of your time today. We love doing these things. We at Device42, I know Chris and I really enjoy the opportunity to work with Freshworks and with Berkeley and you know, all the people that put together this stuff to make this happen is very important. So, but thank you, the attendees, for coming, and we hope you found some value for this. So goodbye for now.